Hi, I'm Ross McLean, and this is the McLean Chronicles. I'm a former law enforcement officer. I used to do close protection work with billionaires. I understand them and their thinking quite closely, and I work for one of the largest global Fortune 50 companies in the world. And I'm here to tell you that Canada's economy is broken. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how that is, so you won't ever be fooled again by the government and where we're going. We have lots of problems in Canada. Now, I've come across a guy by the name of Jim Balsillie. You might know him. He was the guy who came up with the BlackBerry, and he made over $20 billion in sales around the world using technology. This is a guy who knows global, who knows technology, and he knows how to make money. He's in private investments now, and he's probably easily worth more than $1 billion. But he's been speaking for years about how Canada is broken. And once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it and know what we have to do to get better going forward. So BlackBerry was a worldwide success, based here in Canada. So Jim Balsillie knows what it is to have to start up a tech company in Canada and how to be successful. He did it at a time when there weren't many companies that grew as big, as fast, or as well as what he did. And he's looked at the Canadian economy and he knows exactly what the problems are and exactly what it's going to take to get us out of it. Now, what I like about this is all of his comments are what I've been thinking for years. But let me share them with you now, what it's going to take and why we're so broken. Here is just one of Jim Balsillie's interviews that he did on the Canadian economy. He's done dozens of them for years. And he's been saying the same thing, but somehow media doesn't want to let it out because it doesn't look well on the government. But listen to what he has to say here. Where did our problems start? Guess what? They started way back in the 1990s.
Well, I think the most important thing that went wrong in Canada was we never updated our thinking. As the world in the early mid-90s was moving to a knowledge-based economy, Canada's economic thinking was a production-based economy.
You heard it there from Jim. In the 90s, Canada was a production-based economy. That's what we thought was pretty good. Let's just produce things. Let's just let the American companies come here, set up branch plants, put them in here, and we'll just get the jobs. Jobs, that's the word I want you to get out of this whole video. Canada is stuck on getting jobs and not wealth. Why? It's the easiest thing for the government to do. It's the easiest thing for the government to tax. And Jim Balsillie even thinks that the Canadian government has had what he calls elite capture, which meaning all these foreign companies, they basically own our politicians.
So we didn't have the strategies that focused on enclosing and owning the IP. And then as we went into the 2000s, owning and controlling the data. The feeling was give it away and the branch plants will carry us along. So as the rest of the world kept getting smarter and smarter in these strategies in Western Europe, in the United States, and Southeast Asia, Canada stayed stuck in an old kind of thinking, and the price of that became greater and greater and greater. Data economy got more and more powerful and bigger. These companies really got deeper and deeper into the policymaking realm of their countries and the geopolitical, geoeconomic structure, that these became state, public-private elements, and that just wasn't in Canada's playbook. Canada's playbook was hands-off, free market, cut taxes, cut regulation. Foreign branch plants are as good as a Canadian company. A job's a job's a job.
You saw in particular with the car battery plants. Oh, they said, we're going to create thousands of jobs. But what did we see? All the high-paying smart jobs, they all brought people in from Korea, from Asia, from other places, all the ones who got the high-paying jobs, all the ones who knew how to make the batteries, the ones with the technology for the batteries. They all went to foreign people who sent the money back to their country. And all the money that would come from those batteries would go back to the foreign companies. It wasn't big money here. We just got some jobs, the floor sweepers, the guys twisting the bolts and things like that. Now, you see this all the time. Melanie Joly runs around. She says, oh, look, Lufthansa is doing an investment here with us, with WestJet. Yeah, Lufthansa is bringing in the IP, they're bringing in the knowledge, they're making all the payments, they're getting all the wealth of it, and we're getting some jobs. We're going to be the guys that help screw the bolts on the engines and things like that. They're going to bring us jobs. They're going to bring us jobs, right? But that's not going to get us wealthy. And it's going to put us further and further in the ditch. The other big problem here is look at BC. They're sending off their ferries to get built in China. Now, why is that money, $1 billion, not going into Canadians and Canadian technology, Canadians to learn, Canadians to buy the infrastructure to start building our own boats? Why are we giving billions of dollars to ferry companies? Why are we giving billions of dollars to auto companies that don't need it? Why are we giving billions of dollars to multinationals that don't need it and then hurting Canadians? Now, Balsillie will tell you that where this is a real problem is you try and operate your own tech company in Canada. Maybe you got something doing battery technology you think is pretty good. But guess what? Volkswagen comes in and the government takes billions of your tax dollars and gives it to Volkswagen. Volkswagen then goes off and does what? They hire all the best people, maybe even some of them that are working for you. They're taking all the best people. Now you can't get the right people to work to make your Canadian company a success. And then here's the real best part of it. The Canadian government taxes you to give the money to that foreign company so they can take your workers and take the money out of the country. This is Canada's problem.
So it was a product of outdated thinking that never upgraded, coupled with a corporate capture of the policy making, and the price of that just kept growing more and more. What they did, they put extensive intellectual property provisions in the NAFTA agreement of 1994, and then they'd spent 5 years developing what are called the TRIPS provisions of the WTO, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property.
Now, Jim is going to tell you what IP really is. Intellectual property. It's I had a neighbor of mine one time. He was a legitimate genius, one of those Mensa type guys, extremely smart. He actually had some patents. And he said to me, Ross, he says, you know what the greatest thing that the US has ever done? Protection of intellectual property, he says. You know, if you try and steal their intellectual property, they'll go to trade wars for you. They can take people to court. They'll put people in jail for you. Heck, he says they might even send their military over to do a blockade if you're doing enough to steal enough American IP. But Canada, we're asleep at the switch. It's another problem Jim talks about. We do IP here in Canada. He says that some of the top IP that went to go start up Google was done in Canada with Canadian research at the U of T. And it left here for next to nothing. He said the same thing about battery technology for Tesla. It was all invented here in Canada, but we let the patents go for next to nothing. And all the money's being made with the patents. We got some real problems here. But listen as Jim explains very simply what it is for negative rights and how patents work.
An intangible is what's called a negative right, because it's a positive right is this jacket. I physically own it. It's not rivalrous. Only one person can wear it at a time, and its ownership's not really contested. But the design of this jacket is a negative right. And that means I can stop somebody from designing that. But it's non-rivalrous, which means 1 million people can use that design at the same time. If I have rights to it, I can give permission to 1 million people for that, and I can collect a right. And when you're good at that, then a small number of people can get $5 a jacket for a design. You're very quickly $5 million of revenue, say, a year, and that's what drives up GDP per capita.
I remember back in the day when Pat Riley, when he was the coach of the Magic, I think it was it Chicago, where someone was coming up for their 3rd championship? So he trademarked the words three-peat. So if you wanted to make a shirt that said, hey, Bulls, three-peat, or whoever, three-peat, Yankees, three-peat, whatever, you had to pay him each time you used that word three-peat. That's what intellectual property is. That's the power of it. You can get quite rich with that. A lot of the basketball players, Shaquille O'Neal owns a ton of intellectual property, where every time someone uses it, he gets paid on it. But Canada, we're asleep at the switch. We don't invest in developing it in Canada. When we do, we let it go. And we don't allow Canadians to develop because we give billions to foreign companies to come here and compete against Canadians who could be making that money. Now, Jim's got a real problem with this current government and how it's been going for the last 10 years. He thinks they're accelerating it off a cliff to make it worse for Canadians, because that's all you'll hear them talk about. Carney, LeBlanc, Champagne, Jolie, We're going to get you jobs. Jobs where you can compete against the poorest people in the world for the labor rates. But we're not going to help you get wealthy by investing in Canadians and doing Canadian startups and letting Canadians sell to Canadians. What good does it do getting rid of all the interprovincial trade barriers if the only companies that operate here are American branch plants and subsidiaries? And all we're doing is helping that get back and forth in Canada. Why don't we let Canadians get rich?
It's been a failure by policy for 30 years in Canada, but nobody's taken it this fast and this irresponsibly as this current government, and obviously the extraordinary mismanagement of things like immigration and prosperity and research funding and subsidies and Canada in the global world. And you took a difficult situation and made it much worse.
I mean, if this government doesn't want to do it, maybe Trump will come in and help Canadians to be able to do it. And by the way, Balsillie says that Trump isn't Canada's problem. Canada is Canada's problem. Listen to this.
Canada's problem is not Trump. Canada's problem is Canada. Pogo, I've seen the enemy is us. And we would be a wonderfully prosperous, proper costed, very good income, very safe country if we just take the boot off our own neck.
All right, listen, thanks for listening to me here. This is Ross McLean and the McLean Chronicles. If you like this information, the sort of things I'm giving you, I want to open your eyes to what's going on. Like, subscribe, follow, give me a comment, send me a question. Let me know what it is you want to know about. Thanks very much, and we will see you next video.